Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. We love to take your requests for deep dives, and today we're tackling a big one, money.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at all the different facets of your relationship with money, your
Mm,
beliefs about it. What does it even mean to be rich?
right.
All that good stuff. And, we had you send in some source material
Yeah.
that we could kind of dive into together. And a really interesting question kind of emerged from what you sent us. Is money a cause in our lives, or is it an effect?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting looking at this material because a lot of the sources we've got today really lean heavily toward this idea of money as an effect and not a cause.
Okay.
So almost as if to say that true abundance isn't driven by money itself, but that money is simply a result of the abundance that we cultivate in other areas of our life.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. So, if money is an effect, what's the cause?
Right.
What are we actually cultivating to create that abundance?
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. A lot of the sources point to things like recognizing your unique value and then allowing that value to flow into the world, aligning your actions with your passions and talents. And I think one of the sources used a really good example of this. It was a language teacher who turned her passion into a successful tutoring business. So her dedication to her craft, her genuine desire to help others learn, created this ripple effect that manifested as financial success.
It's not about chasing money itself. It's
Mhm.
about pursuing excellence in whatever you do and trusting that the financial abundance will follow.
Exactly. And this brings us to another really crucial point that many of the sources kind of touch upon, and that's the narrative that we tell ourselves about money.
Mm.
Do we see it as a constant source of stress, a
Hmm.
finite resource that's always in short supply?
Right?
Or do we view it as a tool for creation, for enjoyment, for building the life that we want?
I love that. Because our internal dialogue about money can be so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think back on like my own journey, there was definitely a time where I had a very negative money narrative.
Mhm.
Just always worried about not having enough. And it really felt like I was just constantly attracting situations that just reinforce that fear.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing how often we unconsciously block our own abundance,
Right.
just holding on to these limiting beliefs.
Yeah,
And I think it's almost like we send a message to the universe saying, I don't deserve wealth. And the universe in its own way reflects that belief back to us.
totally. And it wasn't until I really consciously made an effort to shift my money narrative and started viewing money as a tool to create positive change,
Yeah.
that things really started to shift for me.
Absolutely.
But it was a conscious effort. Like I had to change that internal dialogue.
And I think that's a key takeaway for anybody listening. What is your internal dialogue about money?
Yeah.
What messages did you pick up about money growing up? Because those early experiences, those inherited narratives, really shape how we interact with money throughout our lives.
Hmm. And something else that was super interesting to me that came up in a few of the sources was this idea that chasing financial security,
Right.
at least in the traditional sense, can actually come at a high cost.
Yeah. It's like we're challenging this conventional wisdom
Yeah.
about, responsible financial behavior. We're always told to strive for stability, a secure job, a predictable income. But a lot of these sources argue that this pursuit can actually trap us in lives that don't truly align with our passions and values.
Hmm. And, one source gave an example of somebody feeling totally trapped in a job they hated simply because it paid the bills.
Right.
Sure, they achieved a certain level of financial security, but at what cost to their well-being,
Exactly.
their creativity,
Yeah.
their sense of purpose?
And then there's that potential for resentment when we feel financially obligated to others, maybe supporting family members
Right,
who haven't cultivated their own financial independence.
right.
And then, of course, we've got the illusion that material wealth equals happiness, which
Always gets debunked.
we see debunked time and time again.
Yeah, because there's so much more to a rich life than just the number in your bank account.
For sure.
And one source had this great story of a man who found real abundance by just using his language skills to travel the world, experience different cultures, connect with people from all walks of life. And, it might not be this conventional path to wealth, but it really highlights that idea that a rich life can take so many forms.
Absolutely.
Something that really resonated with me was the emphasis on generosity.
Oh, yeah.
How does our relationship with money affect our capacity to give?
Such an important point. And, a lot of the sources emphasize that True generosity comes not from obligation, but from this genuine desire to empower others,
Hmm.
to contribute to something larger than ourselves. They also talk about the importance of clarity
Mm.
in our financial dealings, whether it's lending money to family or negotiating a contract.
So being really upfront and honest about financial expectations is key to maintaining healthy relationships and avoiding, those misunderstandings down the line.
Totally. Clarity ensures that everyone's on the same page, expectations are aligned, and that financial decisions are made with integrity and respect.
Yeah, it seems like this lack of clarity, can really perpetuate a scarcity mindset.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the sources point out that when we avoid this, open and honest communication around money, we're actually kind of opening the door to all sorts of problems,
Yeah.
misunderstandings, resentment, even strained relationships.
Yeah.
And it all ties back into this idea of money as an effect.
Right.
If we're not clear about our financial boundaries and our values and
Yeah.
expectations, then we might end up attracting situations that don't actually align with our true sense of abundance.
It's like we're trying to use money to buy things that money can't buy,
Totally.
genuine connection or self-worth or a sense of belonging.
And one source gave a really interesting example of this. They talked about people who feel pressured to overspend to maintain a certain image or certain lifestyle.
Hmm.
And, they might appear wealthy on the surface, but they're actually sacrificing their financial well-being
Right.
just for external validation.
Yeah.
And that's not true abundance. That's a form of scarcity matched by these material possessions.
It's almost like they're trying to fill a void with things instead of really addressing that underlying need.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think a lot of the sources challenge us to really examine, what are our motivations around money?
Right.
Are we using it to fill a void, to seek external validation? Or are we using it as a tool to create a life that really aligns with our values and brings us genuine joy?
One of the sources had this really powerful analogy. I thought it was so interesting. They were comparing money to water,
Okay.
and they were saying, that money, like water, needs to flow. If it becomes stagnant, if we're hoarding it out of fear or insecurity, then it loses its power to nourish, and it can even become, toxic.
That's such a vivid image. I think it really highlights that dynamic nature of money.
Mm-hmm.
And when we allow it to flow freely, when we use it to invest in ourselves and our passions and our communities, then it generates more abundance, not just for ourselves, but for others as well.
So it's not about hoarding wealth, but about circulating it in a way that creates positive change.
Exactly. And a lot of the sources talk about the role of gratitude
Mm-hmm.
in this process. When we appreciate what we have, when we're grateful for the resources that come into our lives, we open ourselves up to receiving even more.
I've noticed that too in my own life. When I'm really focused on what I lack, when I'm constantly worried about money, it's like I'm pushing abundance away.
Mm-hmm.
But when I shift my focus to gratitude, when I appreciate the financial resources that I do have, it just changes my whole energy.
And that shift in energy is key because it signals to the universe that we're ready to receive more. It's like we're saying, I trust in the flow of abundance and I'm open to receiving all the good that's meant for me.
A few of the sources even talk about money magnets,
Right.
these people who just seem to effortlessly attract financial abundance. What sets them apart?
Well, they often share certain traits. They have a really strong sense of self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
a belief in their own ability to create wealth, a willingness to take calculated risks, and a deep sense of gratitude for the abundance that they already have.
So it's not about luck or being born into privilege. It's about cultivating a mindset
Mm-hmm.
and a set of behaviors that align with financial abundance.
And the exciting thing is this is something that anyone can do.
Yeah.
The sources emphasize that it starts with becoming aware of our current money narrative, challenging those limiting beliefs,
Right.
and consciously choosing to adopt a more empowering perspective.
So the first step is to just become aware of the stories that we're telling ourselves about money
Yes.
and then start rewriting those stories.
And a simple but really powerful practice that they suggest is just practicing gratitude
Right.
for the financial resources that we already have, no matter how small they may seem.
Yeah.
Because gratitude amplifies abundance. It's like sending a signal to the universe. I'm ready for more.
One thing that really stuck with me was this idea that our relationship with money is really a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. If we're constantly criticizing ourselves, doubting our abilities, or feeling unworthy,
Right.
that's going to show up in our financial life too.
Such a profound connection. I think it highlights the importance of self-love and self-acceptance in attracting abundance.
Mhm.
Because if we don't believe in our own value, if we don't believe that we deserve good things, it's going to be much harder to attract those things into our lives, including financial wealth.
So it's not just about changing our thoughts and beliefs about money, but about really cultivating a deeper sense of self-worth.
Absolutely. Because when we truly love and value ourselves, we naturally make choices that support our well-being, including our financial well-being.
Right.
We're more likely to invest in ourselves, set healthy boundaries, and pursue opportunities that align with our passions and our talents.
Speaking of opportunities, a lot of the sources talked about being proactive
Right.
in creating financial abundance. It's
Yeah.
not just about, waiting for money to fall into our laps, but about actively taking steps to cultivate our skills,
Mhm.
explore new possibilities, and manage our finances wisely.
It's about aligning our external world with our internal sense of abundance.
Yeah.
And one of the sources I thought had some really practical tips. They talked about creating a budget,
Mm-hmm.
tracking your spending, and
Right.
setting financial goals.
Yeah, I feel like that can be really overwhelming for people who are already stressed about money.
Oh, for sure.
But one of the sources addressed that, and they emphasized that we don't have to do everything perfectly from the start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset,
Right.
from fear to empowerment, and that shift can be gradual. One source suggested just starting small, maybe track your spending for a week or set aside a small amount each month in a savings account.
And those small steps can make a big difference.
Totally.
Another source talked about surrounding ourselves with people
Oh, yeah.
who support our financial growth.
That's so important because our environment has such a huge impact on our mindset and behavior.
Right.
And if we're constantly surrounded by people who are complaining about money or struggling financially or just stuck in that scarcity mindset,
Right.
it's going to be much harder to break free.
It's like we're absorbing their energy,
Yeah,
their beliefs, their limitations.
absolutely.
But when we surround ourselves with people who are financially abundant,
Right.
who believe in their own ability to create wealth
Mhm.
and are generous with their resources and knowledge,
Mhm.
it's like it inspires us to step into our own power.
It creates that positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
And we start to see financial abundance as something that's possible for us, something that we can create, something that we deserve.
One source even said that, we become like the 5 people we spend the most time with.
Right.
So if we want to be financially abundant, we need to be mindful of the company we keep.
And it's not just about the people that we physically spend time with.
Right.
It's also, the books that we read, the podcasts that we listen to,
Right.
the information that we consume. Are we feeding our minds with messages of scarcity and limitation, or with ideas of abundance, prosperity, and possibility?
I feel like this deep dive has really made me think about where I'm directing my attention and my energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've been handed this brand new map for navigating the world of money.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into our final thoughts.
It feels like so much of what we talked about today comes back to, shifting our perspective, recognizing that true abundance, it's an inside-out process.
That is such an empowering realization.
Yeah.
It means that we're not at the mercy of these external circumstances.
Right.
We have the power to cultivate abundance from within, and that inner shift ultimately will be reflected in our external reality.
Yeah, and a lot of the sources highlighted the importance of aligning our intentions with our actions.
Right.
It's not just about thinking abundant thoughts.
Yeah.
It's about acting in alignment with those thoughts.
It's about taking those practical steps that we talked about earlier, like creating a budget, exploring new income streams, setting financial goals,
Right.
and approaching those tasks with a sense of purpose and excitement
Yeah.
rather than fear or overwhelm.
I think that's such an important distinction. It's about shifting our energy from that scarcity and fear to empowerment and possibility.
One source even used the word faith in this context,
Yeah.
and they talked about trusting that we're supported, that we have the ability to create the life we desire, and that abundance is available to us, even if we can't see it yet.
It's like leap and the net will appear.
Exactly. And that leap of faith often requires us to step outside of our comfort zones,
Yeah.
to challenge those limiting beliefs and embrace those new possibilities.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from our conversation today?
I really hope they remember that financial abundance isn't just about accumulating wealth. It's about living a life that feels rich and fulfilling in every area.
Yeah.
It's about aligning your internal world with your external reality so that money becomes a tool for good,
Right.
a source of joy and a reflection of your own unique brilliance.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah,
So much of it is about recognizing that true wealth encompasses so much more than just our financial resources.
for sure.
It's our relationships, our health, our creativity, our connection to something larger than ourselves.
Absolutely.
And when we cultivate abundance in all those areas, our financial well-being will naturally reflect that inner richness.
Totally.
So, dear listener, what resonated with you the most during this deep dive? What's one action that you can take today, no matter how small,
Right.
to cultivate a more abundant mindset and create the financial reality you desire?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Connect with us on social media. Share your insights, your challenges, your breakthroughs, because we're all on this journey together.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of money.
Yeah.
May you find the clarity, the courage, and the inspiration to create a life of true abundance.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
And remember, you are worthy of abundance.